What is up, everyone? My name is Megan Militello. I'm the Supply Chain Optimization Manager at the Alaska MEP. I'm filling in for Sammy Joe. She is on maternity leave. Today, we have Samson from Arctic Manufacturing Services. Thank you for joining me, Samson. I appreciate it. How are
Yeah,
you
of course.
doing today? How is Alaska right now? I'm actually not in Alaska today.
Well, you were missing out. I have got an amazing raccoon tan going because we have tons of sun, and I've been skiing the crap out of the amazing snow we've been having. So, not like perfect sunny day right now, but generally speaking, it's been like gorgeous weather and amazing skiing. So,
I
yeah,
love
hard
it.
to complain.
Yeah. I actually had a hard time leaving. I'm in Hawaii, so I cannot complain whatsoever. But I was
Yeah.
like, oh, man, the sun is here, the longer days. Yeah, didn't want to leave.
Yep.
All right. So I just want to jump straight into it. Can you tell us about Arctic Manufacturing Services and then your background in manufacturing for those people that haven't seen you before?
Yeah. So I am a stamped mechanical engineer here in Alaska. So that allows me to do stamped mechanical engineering work, which is kind of where I got my, I guess, early career started. And so that includes kind of like plumbing drawings, HVAC drawings, tenant improvements. Um, and yeah, I was born and raised in Alaska. Went to school on the East Coast, went to college on the East Coast. Basically was like, hey, what big city can I live in and go to school? Because Alaska doesn't really have a whole lot of those. And so, yeah, I went to school in Boston for a couple of years and then finished my degree in Philadelphia at Drexel University. And I mean, from a very early age, I have enjoyed making things, taking things apart. My dad has always had a shop full of tools. He did like project management, construction stuff. So whether he encouraged us to use the tools or I just used them, they were available, which was huge. And so I've always enjoyed that. I went to college and kind of was not very interested in school. I was going to school for engineering, enjoying it fine. But I'm paying for this very expensive thing. And then I was not really doing it as well as I should have been. So I took a winter off to go skiing, which is basically what I work for. And I went to Bozeman, lived in Montana in my brother's basement for a winter, kind of mulled some stuff over, realized that working in the kitchen and ski bumming was not a sustainable career for me. And yeah, went back to school and kind of went to school in Philadelphia. And that, I think, is where I really kind of it was reinforced that engineering, like, oh, I'm really interested in this, and then specifically manufacturing. Drexel had an amazing machine shop. They had, a really large kind of research base there. So I was able to get involved in the lab early on and help them with some of their manufacturing techniques. And then I ended up, one of the struggles that I have is group projects, as many people do. And so I saw this kind of upcoming senior thesis, and I thought to myself, like, this is going to be a group project for sure. And if you do a master's thesis instead, you don't have to be in a group. So I added a master's degree on to my kind of track there and was able to do a master's thesis. And the whole thesis was basically, can a product development process, which is, you often think of like Xerox applying kind of this process for developing products. Can this kind of, well-documented process for product development, can that be applied to smaller operations, specifically farms? And so a little bit esoteric, unsurprisingly, but it allowed me to work with a stakeholder and kind of work through that product development process, and then design an apparatus and actually construct that thing. And that was kind of the keys that I was looking for. Was okay, if I'm going to do this kind of capstone thing, I want to design something and make the physical thing. And that has always been really kind of valuable to me, is the having some sort of tangible good at the end of it. Unsurprisingly, manufacturing is all about that, right? You provide somebody with some drawings, and then hopefully at the end of that process, you get some sort of tangible part. And to me, there's nothing more satisfying than someone gave me a drawing that is flat. It's a PDF document or printed out, and then you give them the 3D object back, and it's just this like, oh, whoa, it's here. It's you can kind of see the light click in the back of their head. They were like, oh, it's real now. And so, yeah, I was kind of facilitated this deep dive into manufacturing and product development for the kind of end of my college. I came back to Alaska and got a job with a mechanical contractor, with design build company, which was fine, enjoyable, but it was construction. And so, the problems that I was solving were, how do I fit this toilet in this, room? How do I, get enough air to this room? And there was a tangible side. I did get to, actually see, the buildings, the progress, the projects, which is very important. But it wasn't manufacturing per se. And it was, I was very well removed fairly well removed from the actual construction side of it. But one of the things I picked up from that was, that communication between people that make things and then people that design things, or, hopefully design things. It seemed to be a constant struggle. That communication was not really super strong or encouraged. And so that has been something that I, immediately sought out, from the start of my career, was, okay, how do I make myself as approachable as possible? But then how do I swallow my ego and ask people, hey, this is what I have created design wise. Will it work? Do you have a better idea? And so, I worked for that company for, I think it was like 2 years, maybe 3 years, and an amazing experience. But I wanted manufacturing after that. And so I ended up getting a job in California at what I thought was my dream job, which was a design build machine shop. They do a bunch of bicycle parts and kind of wine industry stuff. And I worked there as a design engineer, which was awesome. And it was a CNC machine shop. So it had that, design side where I'm, getting to be creative, solving a problem. But then, I walk literally down a staircase and there's 10 machines that I'm then, helping to start up, and then operators will continue to make these finished goods. That was phenomenal. But I ended up missing the mountains of Alaska, and well, to be frank, the Bay Area was not a sustainable place for me. I wish that I could have afforded to be there, but
it's so expensive.
Not working at a machine shop anyways.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I came back to Alaska, worked for a mechanical contractor again for a couple of years, transitioned into an oil support industry, basically a company that manufactured stuff for the oil service fields. And as I'm sure many of you are aware, the petroleum industry is very, I don't know if cyclic is the right word, but it is very highs and lows. So we went through a low point and I got laid off, and all of a sudden I had this opportunity. Well, of course, initially I was like, okay, what other jobs are there? Apply for everything I can find. One of the things I've always struggled with in Alaska is there's not a whole lot of manufacturing that happens here. So there's not a whole lot of manufacturing jobs. So I saw some jobs that would facilitate my livelihood, i.e. I could afford new skis, I could go skiing on weekends, things like that. But I did not see anything that really kind of caught my attention on the manufacturing side. And so I was in a place that allowed me to try and go out on my own. And so I did. And yeah, so I think that, what has it been, coming up on 4 years that I went into business for myself. And I basically did not see the work that I wanted to do in Alaska. And so I made the work that I wanted to do in Alaska. It has not always been the exact work that I want to do. Like I mentioned, as a mechanical engineer, I do drawings still. I'm not just manufacturing. But I have been able to kind of develop enough diverse revenue streams that, yeah, I've been supporting myself for almost 4 years now. And then providing manufacturing in Anchorage, which is where I was born and raised. So I am, providing a service that I enjoy, I am passionate about, in a place that I enjoy and am passionate about. And then one of the coolest things is, because there's not a whole lot of manufacturing in Alaska, and I am so passionate about it and so open about it, I have been able to kind of show some people or introduce some people to manufacturing, and just kind of having them make that connection. And I am by no means the only person doing this. I mean, Janet Alpine Fit, like she'll drop a tour on you if you just like look at her sewing machine the wrong way. And there are amazing other manufacturers, but there is something about that block of metal or a pile of metal, and then on the right hand side it's a pile of finished parts, and then being able to watch that process. People, you can kind of see that spark turn on in their head where they're like, oh, like things aren't unobtainium. I can make something, or things can be made, which is very exciting for me. So long-winded response, but basically, yeah, I don't know. I've always been in manufacturing, and then that work doesn't exist. A whole lot of that work doesn't exist in Alaska, so I decided to make it.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for following your passion and doing something that you love and continuing to do that, right? Like all the development that you put into yourself to get to this point, like that's huge. What has been like one of your funnest projects that you've done in the last 4 years doing this for yourself?
Okay, so I have a one, not the funnest project, but I don't have any employees. I've had a couple of interns though, and one of the first questions I asked them is, what is something that you've broken recently? As just kind of like an icebreaker / also like maybe that's I tried to make a surfboard and it snapped, or I asked a girl out and my feelings were broken. It can be anything, right? And so I, in that same vein, one of the 3 reasons I asked that is it kind of helps make things a little bit more informal, but then it hopefully will kind of spark that passion in their head, and then we'll get them a little bit more free flowing in their speech. And so one of the things I try and retrospectively look back is like, maybe not like a cool project, but like, would my younger self be excited? Like, would 6-year-old Sam be stoked that like, I have this cool piece of equipment or things like that? And so I think that is more comfortable for me to swallow, because outside of like projects for customers, putting the pressure on myself to make cool stuff is I enjoy, but it is a lot easier for me to kind of take that bigger perspective of like, okay, generally speaking, am I happy with kind of the process that I've gone to? And I would wholeheartly say, yes, I definitely am. 6-year-old Samson would be stoked on this. But all that being said, I would say, kind of a current one, a recent one has been, I am trying to make an ice skating probe. Not trying, I'm in the process of developing an ice skating probe. And so one of the things that I try and do is, there are processes that I don't have any reason to do. I don't need to be making carbon fiber tubes or aluminum shafts, or I can source that from somebody else. But in the process of kind of using those, or maybe even trying to make those, you quickly learn some kind of techniques or some things that are like, oh, that's weird. Like, it doesn't actually bend back. Like, it did, but this version doesn't. And so that trial and error during the manufacturing process has been super fun on the probe side. I've gotten to dabble with heat treating, and kind of like that whole metallurgical mystery world is basically just alchemy to me. But yeah, I would say that the ice probe has been a recent one that has been super exciting.
Cool.
And yeah.
Love that. Okay, so I would love to know too, because when it comes to manufacturing, automation is such a huge deal. So how have you taken any steps, or what steps have you taken to incorporate automation into your business operations? And then has that technology adaptation benefited you?
Yes and yes. So I very much enjoy my flexibility. Having the intern has been, lovely. That's usually during the summer for 4 to 6 weeks. But I need to show up every time that they're here, and I need to provide a working space for them. And so it quickly reiterated that employees, maybe in the future, once I have a more consistent revenue stream, maybe, but I very much enjoy the flexibility I have of being self-employed, of not not providing a livelihood for anyone. I would love to be able to do that, but the pressure that's associated with that is, not the easiest. So as a machine shop, there are a couple of ways that you can kind of increase your revenue or automate things, for lack of a better term. You can hire people and they can stand in front of a machine and they can load that machine with parts. You can kind of automate the machining itself. So instead of the operator changing tools or, cranking wheels back and forth, you introduce a computer numerical control. And so kind of the first thing I did was basically buy a CNC machine. And so instead of a manual machine where you're driving things back and forth, most everything is digitalized. And so I can make a 3D model, create tool paths, basically create an entire manufacturing plan digitally, do some magic sauce and get my machine to then make things. And so that first step of, okay, I'm not swapping tools, I'm not manually turning things. That's a fairly kind of low automation point. Basically, you instead of a manual machine, you buy a numerically controlled machine. But then the other kind of big component of CNC manufacturing is, most of the time you are doing production runs. You're making more than one item, and so instead of machining one item at a time, you try and machine 10 at a time or 100 at a time. And so you try and put as many parts in the machine at a single time as you can. And so I've done that as well. The idea being that instead of, hey, I take the part, I put it in the machine, and then 5 minutes later I have to do it again. If I put 5 of them in the machine, then I can walk away for 25 minutes. And so what that has really allowed me to do is, don't tell my customers this, but it's allowed me to double bill. So my machines run, and then while they're doing their thing, I can go do engineering or do some more product development, or go outside, take my dog for a walk. And so that kind of automating the process to basically increase the cycle time so that I can walk away. That has been a major component of kind of my automation pathway. And so again, that idea of like, okay, take the process, automate the process itself. And then instead of making one part, how do I automate more parts to be made at the same time? And eventually what I would like to do is move to an articulating arm for material loading. And so if I load 10 parts into the machine, exactly, yeah. So if I load 10 parts in the machine, let's say the cycle time is 30 minutes and I walk away, 30 minutes is still, unfortunately, that's like not that much. That's not enough time for me to like switch mindsets to like okay, engineering now, like think numbers and lines, things like that versus manufacturing. And so, one of the ways is instead of having me go check on the machine every 30 minutes or whatever, I just have a robot that takes parts and just loads them over and over and over again. And they're not inexpensive per se, but generally speaking, when you look at like kind of cost comparison to an operator, to a human, they can pencil out fairly quickly. And so, generally my automation pathway has been, and this is kind of my strategy with a lot of things, is like small bits at a time, right? So I didn't like make a product and then be like, okay, I've got 10,000 of these to make, so I'm going to buy a robot arm and a brand new machine, and like, that's the way. Instead of kind of taking these like small steps to get towards a more automated process. Yeah. And one of the biggest things for me during that process is documenting everything. And so I don't have employees, but it makes it so much easier when I can walk up to a machine or to a process and I have, a sheet and it tells me what I need to do. It tells me, hey, these are the tools you need to pull. This is how you locate the thing. And so, there's the kind of automated side, which is the like, I pressed go and it made 1,000 instead of 1. But then there is also for me, there is kind of this like automatic second nature, like automating my brain almost, or automating muscle memory, maybe even. But basically, trying to remove those extra stressors of like, oh shit, it's like supposed to get the like 1-inch tool, a 1/2 inch. And instead I've got this thing that, I have vetted, over 4 times or, whatever process, however many times I've vetted this thing, constantly gets improved slightly. but it helps alleviate some of those kind of like minute stresses that, like, you look at a number, you read it, and then you turn around and you have to type it. Like, that is like it's a little storage thing that happens in my brain where I'm like, if I can minimize those, then it makes my livelihood a lot better. So I think that, there's kind of two sides that I have like automated or I'm automating, which is the actual kind of manufacturing process itself, and then the like documentation of the process.
Yeah. Well, it's so smart to do that because you are also preparing yourself for when you have those interns, employees, whenever it is, even if it's years down the road, it's like alleviates your brain, but you have this system, you have this process that you've already tested time and time again. So now when Bob comes in, it's just going to be like, okay, Bob, this is the system. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to go and reiterate and then expect someone else to remember and memorize and do it all.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, these are so key. Something I feel like this should be happening in every place. This should be happening in every place. So this is a really good like tip.
It's time intensive though. I mean, to not only like, okay, I'm making 1,000 a thing, but then during that process, I'm updating the stupid form that some stupid schmuck made 3 weeks ago. Didn't know what they were doing. I'm having to constantly do that. But I think that over time, those small little things will allow me to kind of pursue other bigger things with a little bit more confidence, and then to more confidence in what my existing stuff does, and not having to like stress about those small little things again.
Yeah, totally. I feel like I did a lot of this also in Elevated Oats recipes. It's manufacturing. This is manufacturing.
No,
it's like
a kitchen is like the one of the best ways to like conceptualize manufacturing, particularly like lean principles and things like that. It's like a wide, and like even your home kitchen is like an interesting, anyways, yeah, it's a whole other thing. But yeah, food prep is like, not prep, but food manufacturing is like one of the hardest manufacturing, in my opinion. I mean, people have to eat it eventually. It has to taste good. It's crazy.
Yeah. And sometimes it doesn't last very long.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's wild. Okay. Interesting. Let me go back to this robotic arm thing. That is amazing. Great way to save some time, resource, and alleviate that for yourself instead of just hiring another person. Because a problem that a lot of our business owners, not just in manufacturing, but just everywhere, I can't even say not just in Alaska because it's everywhere, is dealing with a workforce shortage, right?
Yeah,
so how can we alleviate that issue if we can't even find people, right? We have to be automating our systems, technology, like all of these things so that we can accommodate that lack of workforce too. And still grow.
I guess maybe I'm just overthinking this a little bit, but I think that my scale of business, as many people of my scale struggle with, you're like, okay, I'm going to hire someone, right? You've made the decision to hire someone. And you're like, okay, am I hiring, someone that knows nothing, or am I hiring someone that knows everything, or am I looking for the golden goose that has like a little bit of both? And so, part of that automating the process, then I can hopefully hire any one of those three individuals or that entire scale, and bring them in. And, maybe someone that costs me more is going to provide more insightful feedback on my existing process, perhaps. But hopefully by kind of continuing that development and documenting that automation, I can then take that, and apply it to any one of my employees, whether their skill level is, as low as mine, or as high as my dog. You can apply that across the board. But yeah, it's having skilled labor is tricky. And then again, coming back to the kind of, if I am not providing a livelihood for someone, then I don't feel as bad when I go take off on a Friday to go skiing, because, all right, I made it work. I know that I can make this work, but then, so there's sometimes the machines are a little bit easier than the humans. Sometimes.
I feel like this is a line out of Terminator or something. Oh, that's great. Yeah, it is. Well, also an interesting part of being an entrepreneur is not just like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but sometimes as entrepreneurs, we're pivoting all the time. It's not just two hats. You need someone that wears like 12. You can't always give them full-time hours. Maybe it's part-time. So there's like all of this flexibility things
Yeah.
that we approach. Yeah, it's a really interesting like area to be in where the next step is big. It's a big next leap into
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
But I guess that has been something that has been when I first started my business, I kind of, was like, oh, I'm a startup. I'll talk to the startup community. And I quickly realized my business was a little bit different, just in the sense I'm bootstrapping for one, and then two, I'm providing a service, not a product. But it has been really nice to not have to chase exponential growth or even like doubling growth. And I think part of that comes down to that slow, steady automation of processes, right? So it's not that, it's not that I now am doing twice as much work. It's not that I improved things to do them twice as fast. It's that over, 5 production batches, I slowly refined my process from, 10 minutes apart to 7 minutes apart to, oh, wait a minute, like op 1 and 2 can get combined. And that slow stepping towards, a more refined process, that's been super helpful. And then, at home in my personal life, I struggle really hard with the like just starting, just the like, okay, I want to do a new raised bed for my garden, or I want to, paint my house or whatever. And like, I just overplan. And at work, I don't have that ability, right? Like I got to pay bills. And so it's really nice that I'm like kind of forced to just like, okay, we're going to like, do a weird print, just like try it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And so that's been, that kind of slow stepping towards a more refined process has been really helpful. And then as you automate things, if your process is not refined, if you try and go from, making 10 at a time to making 100 at a time, and your process is still like on your kitchen table with like, not the right tools, then it's going to be 100 times more difficult to make 100 of them versus 10 of them. And so that, that slow stepping towards just it makes it a lot more digestible.
Yeah. Key lesson here. Patience is a superpower.
But you still got to get stuff done.
You do. But I think a lot of people try to rush that growth and they don't, it is hard to keep up with it. And then, if you do make 100 and it took you a lot longer and you mess up, now what happens to that 100? You have a lot more waste and, there's a lot of pieces to it. So I think, it's a nice slow growth. I think that's important for an entrepreneur.
I got one more thing on that, which is, and then as you automate things, inevitably machines are involved. I mean, they don't have to be. No, they are. Inevitably, you're going to have, machines involved in that automated process. And a machine does exactly what you tell it to do. Sometimes that's good. Most of the time it's good. Sometimes you suck at telling it what it's supposed to do. But there are 1,000 other pieces besides just the machine. So as you're refining your process, you might figure out that like, oh, that's weird. I get this like scrap piece that comes off every time to the right side. And then I have to like swipe it away with my hand. And if you just like brought in a robot arm and did 1,000, then all of a sudden there's a big pile of scrap parts or whatever. And so by, slowly increasing your production on a process, and, slowly is relative, but by going through that process refinement, you tidy things up, which then makes that next step a little bit easier or a lot easier, or increases your likelihood of success. But yeah, if you take a chaotic process and then apply a very expensive, fancy piece of equipment to it, my process will not work that way. I can't just jump into that, right?
Right. No, I think it's all really smart. I love it. My next couple of questions, I feel like we've already kind of gone over them because it was like how you started your journey, which we talked about, and during its inception, which was great. And then the automation. So the advice that you would offer to those entrepreneurs, I feel like we kind of tackled that automation on the operation side, automation on the systems, processes, maybe like more SOP side of things. taking your time, refining as you go. Is there any other things that could be particular to Alaska's environment, like the challenges that we face in Alaska?
Uh, I I was born and raised here, so I have like a kind of like, oh, this is my community. Reach out to everybody here. Everyone is like amazing in terms of if I have a question, I've got 5 or 6 other machine shops that I am, close with their owners or their employees, and I can ask them. And part of me is like, oh, like this is Alaska, it's special. If that doesn't exist anywhere else, you can't do that, which I don't think is true. But I think that reaching out is it's not a silly thing. Sometimes you got to swallow your ego about it, but like, I can't count the times that I have, just asked a vendor like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. Does it make sense? Do you have any suggestions? Versus the like, sending them a thing and be like, can you make this or buy it? And they're like, nope. And so, I probably gave them I gave them an orange and was like, make me a steak. And that doesn't work. And so if I had just bought the right groceries, then they could, maybe help me out. And so I think, that was, it has been something that has been very helpful, is just like being involved in the manufacturing community wherever you're at. And then, and that involvement doesn't have to mean, you're giving away all your time or anything, but just, I guess being open to it.
Yeah.
And then, kind of willing and able to just ask other people for their insight. I have signed a bunch of NDAs, but I have never had someone be like, no, I'm not going to tell you that. Like, I'm not going to tell you how I did that or talk through it. I think as long as you are put off a comfortable front that's, open to people talking to you and things like that, then 9 times out of 10, people are more than happy to tell you that, like, no, don't do it that way. Try this, or like, this is what I've tried. It has worked, hasn't worked. And so, there's a whole lot of struggles with manufacturing in Alaska, but a lot of them can be greatly helped by simply asking someone else, because most likely I'm not the first person that has run into the problem. So hopefully I can find somebody else that has
Right.
run into it.
Yeah. I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I believe in the community and believe in like us helping each other. Like, how can we work together to overcome all of these things?
Yeah.
So, speaking of which, thank you for coming to the manufacturing mixer, because that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to bring that community together, the people, so that we can figure it out.
Yeah. And I don't think that they're, it's one thing to have a specific goal. And I think that is, there's a lot of value in that for like, okay, I am approaching a steel vendor because I need to source some steel. But then there's kind of the soft skill small business side, which is the like, oh, what processes do you have available? Because like that will help me. But then also I can't do everything, so I can send people to you or become a little bit more educated about what's available. And so I think, just as I try and like, okay, I don't know how to build things, field person who is the installer, who's constructing, they have a way better idea. If I can maintain that communication pathway and keep that open, then I'm going to be a lot more successful. They'll be a lot more successful. And so, you don't even have to have a goal in mind per se with the kind of like fostering the manufacturing community. I just, by having myself be open and available, then when something does come up, I have the ability to reach out and to kind of like check my other compadres and be like, hey, does this make sense? Or am I crazy for thinking about this way?
Totally. Well, thank you so much. To wrap us up, is there anything that you have coming up that you're developing, what you're excited about in the future for Arctic Manufacturing Services?
Let's see here. Ski season's still going on, so I don't know. I don't have a whole lot to sell right now. I guess I'll probably have an open house in June. That's when my work anniversary is. And so nice. I like to showcase what I'm doing. And then more importantly, just get people together to have a party. But yeah, otherwise, I don't know. We're coming into summer mode here, so I don't know what that means besides that I'm just going to miss skiing and be biking more.
Pretty much. Yeah, I'm there with you. Well, thanks, Samson. I really appreciate you coming on, giving us all the feedback, info about what you're working on, and then about building a machine shop here in Alaska. Not only that, but like taking it from like that childhood passion that you have and just making that your whole life now. So I love that. Thank you.
This is not my art. This is childlike art, but not my art.
Okay, I figured that was, a new addition to the wall that you just maybe drew during your lunch break.
I think my niece. Yeah, my niece did that one.
Love that. Love that. Well, we'll continue to talk to you in the future, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing all your insight with us and all of our folks that watch the MEP lives that we have here. We're going to be on in another 2 weeks with an expert, and I will see you again then.
Yeah, and then in June for the next mixer. It'll be fun.
Yeah, June. Yeah. See you later, guys.